figure out what you do dream of and pursue that. Maybe it's not work. Maybe it's a hobby, but find it and figure it out. Nobody wants to wait till they're 50 to start living their lives. That is just a horrible way to live your life. I'm going to be talking about, from a minimalist perspective, some tips or thoughts that I have on this whole I don't dream of labor and why I agree with it, why you really shouldn't dream of labor and what to do about it. So you don't want to dream of labor, but you still got bills to pay. So what are we going to do? Hey there, my handsome and pretty little Cobras, and welcome back to the Cobras Nest. For those of you who are new, my name is Mignon Cobra and I make minimalism videos. So today's minimalism video is going to be a really fun one, and that is I don't dream of labor. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. Let's get it. Let's go. Woo. I'm making this video because I've been seeing the trend going around on YouTube and I think it's fantastic, and it's something that has me really excited to make a video on because that is something that really changed my life. I got into this idea that like I don't dream of labor at a really young age. I think I was like 21 when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it completely changed my mind and perspective on the rat race. Like when I read that book, I was like, there's a rat race? That's what we're living in? I can leave this? And it was just so eye-opening and just life-changing that I was like, you know what? At the time, I felt like I was part of a secret club. I really did think there weren't many people who knew about this concept of like leaving the rat race and not dreaming of labor, and I was just like, you know what, like I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna run with it. And that's just been the foundation of like my 20s. I'm gonna be 30 this year, so for the past 10 years more or less, I've been just living my life with that principle in mind, that I just don't dream of labor. And I just kind of wanted to make a video about that kind of concept as somebody who has lived by that ideology or that principle for over a decade, and some, I guess, advice that I want to give now that this is like a trend and maybe people are like fed up. I think a lot of millennials, because I'm a millennial, I think a lot of millennials are like fed up, we're tired, we spent 10 years, maybe 15 years at a job, and we're just like, is this really how I'm going to be spending the rest of my life? And that deep fear of like, oh god, that's what I had in my 20s. Don't ask me why at my 20s. You know what it was? I think I was so sick and tired of studying really hard in university and then thinking I don't get a break. After this, I'm going straight into the workforce, was just like the most like soul crushing and numbing feeling that I had ever felt, that I was like, god, there must be something else. And at the time, all I thought, the only band-aid that was available to me was hyperconsumption. If I felt really stressed out, to the mall I go to buy more stuff, and then you just get in more debt, and then you really do need a job to maintain afloat or pay off your debts, and it was just a horrible way to live. So I think I'm going to be talking about, from a minimalist perspective, some tips or thoughts that I have on this whole I don't dream of labor and why I agree with it, why you really shouldn't dream of labor and what to do about it. So you don't want to dream of labor, but you still got bills to pay. So what are we going to do? Well, the first one, and that is this idea that how do you leave the rat race? I think a lot of this stems a lot deeper than we want to admit. I think a lot of millennials, if we're just like speaking on a practical level, I think a lot of them do have these jobs or prestigious jobs or whatever because, you know, at the core of it, we want to have success and we want to feel accomplished. But I think somewhere along the line, I think life gets in the way in terms of like people have bills to pay, you know, like rent, grocery bills, mortgages, car payments, student loans. There's a lot of things that keep people in place, because I really don't think that all people are, you know, like just are doing this because they love it. But I think with the pandemic, a lot of people realize that, you know what, YOLO, there can be another way to live life. It doesn't have to be like commute to work, and then commute back, and then be brain dead for a couple hours and sleep and repeat. People are realizing, you know what, there might be something more to life than just this. And that brings me into my first point, which is being present in the moment. I think that a lot of people get sucked into this whole like productivity, and it's encouraged by our culture, by the work culture of like, you know, just keep being productive. But Alan Watts said it beautifully. Like, when you're being productive, you're not living in the present moment. And when you're not living in the present moment, you're not essentially existing in the now, and you're not living your life. So I think that that's why a lot of people have become fed up with work and just like, I don't want to do this. So I think that maybe one of the things that we could practice, maybe before we press the quit button or hand in a resignation letter, is to be more present in the moment. I know that's really difficult. How can you be present at work? But that brings me into my next point, which is number 2. Practicing balance between productivity and having fun. I think a lot of us know that when we're having fun, we are in the present moment. And sometimes being a little bit productive can be fun too, but you really do need to have that balance. If you are completely burning yourself out all the time, pursuing just productivity nonstop, well, of course you're not going to dream of labor. Who in the world wants to dream of a life like that? But an interesting point that I wanted to make is that I followed a lot of like people who fired. If you guys don't know that concept, FIRE is like financial independence movement. I'll put it down here. But anyway, a lot of them exited the rat race. They had enough wealth to sustain them, so they didn't have to work anymore. And a lot of them talked about how sitting at the beach with a cocktail for a week or two, a month, was just meaningless. And a lot of them decided that, you know what, I'm coming back to work. What kind of work did they choose? They chose meaningful work, but they chose They chose to work. So this idea that you don't want to work because you don't want to dream of labor is incorrect. As funny as it is, a lot of people think if I didn't have to work, there's so many other things that I would do. It's true. There are a lot of other things you could do if you didn't have to work. But the thing is, humans, we do like to work. We like that sense of productivity. We like that sense of accomplishment. It's just that we don't have to do it in such unhealthy and non-moderation ways of, I think, living. Some of these working hours are insane, especially some of these higher paying jobs, doctor, nurses, engineers, lawyers. Those are some ungodly hours for salaried pay. And it doesn't matter how you feel. You are paid to do this job. And if anybody has been in that occupation, I think you can all relate to that feeling. Essentially is realizing that humans do enjoy work, but let's just strike a balance. Let's strike a balance between being productive and actually scheduling and making a priority for us having fun and living our lives. Number 2, fulfilling for both parties. I know that a lot of us are just like, you know what, I don't want to work, I don't want to have servitude. And it's true, nobody wants to serve somebody else. Like, let's be honest, who doesn't want to be served? But the thing is, we actually do find at the very top of the pyramid of Maslow's pyramid is actually fulfillment. And that's like providing a service for people. I know, it's like, like who in their right mind would feel fulfilled working for free? But that's what volunteer work is. That is what giving back to the community is. It's that labor that when we see that our work and our contribution is meaningful, we get a sense of fulfillment inside. And that's, I guess it's like on both parties. I think what I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying that, like, you know what, screw not working. I mean, realistically, unless you've fired, kind of do still need income. And so why not switch what kind of job that you have? Maybe find one that's more meaningful, where you can see more direct impact. So teachers, I think, is a pretty good job in terms of like, I mean, like, I'm just speaking from experience. I have found teaching children to be very meaningful because when I help a child, I see the contribution then and there. Maybe at an office job where you're just like filing papers and you no longer have that sense of like immediate inner contribution, it's really easy for your work to become soulless and just ball and chain to a desk, and you just feel like, is this meaningful? Am I meaningful? All right, number 4. This brings us into our next point of what are you contributing to society? So for 2020, that was the longest I ever went unemployed. I mean, like, obviously before I was a student, when I was a student, I was studying. But for 2020, I didn't work. Full year of not working. And I can't say that it wasn't all bad. I mean, I definitely did use the time to work on my YouTube channel. So that was, in a sense, kind of like work. But in terms of just like straight, like salaried work, I definitely felt a huge void. I definitely felt very detached and not a part of society, versus like now that I'm working full time, I feel like I'm part of society again. And I think that the question to ask is like, what are you contributing to society? I know that we don't dream of labor. I know we don't dream of like just constantly serving people. But at the end of the day, we derive a lot of meaning from helping others. We derive a lot of meaning from being part of society and contributing to society in one way or another. We feel like we're important. We feel like we have value. We feel not irreplaceable, because that's one of the problems with like the labor, with dreaming of labor. You're dreaming of being in a position where if you don't do a good enough job, somebody better can easily replace you. So I think that it's good not to dream of labor. Don't dream of labor. But at the same time, do think like, so you're not going to work. Okay, fine. But what could you contribute to in society? And I think that that's very personal for everybody. You have to look inside yourself and find that for you. I can't tell you what that is. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know. But I do think that it's important to understand that an important aspect of one's identity is like, how do you contribute back to society? And number 5, but what are your personal goals? I saw that a lot of people talked about if they didn't work, there's a lot of things that they would do instead with their time. And I completely respect that. There's a lot of things that I could do with my time if I wasn't doing my, full-time job, which I experienced in 2020. And the thing was, without work, the driver was gone. The fire in my engine left. I get more done now with a full-time job than I did without the full-time job. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that we should completely, take the carrot away from the donkey and just set the donkey free. It doesn't have to do labor anymore. I completely agree. I think a lot of us, there is a lot of things that we would do with our time. A lot of people are like, I would take guitar lessons, I would learn this language, I would this, I would that. And I think that's fantastic. But the most important thing to ask yourself, okay, so what are your personal goals? And pick 1 or 2 that are really meaningful to you. I totally get it. Like, a full-time job is really, really exhausting. And I think that some people, especially in the minimalism community, a lot of them decide, you know what, F it, it's not worth it. They cut down their hours from full-time to part-time just so they can start living their lives. Nobody wants to wait till they're 50 to start living their lives. That is just a horrible way to live your life. A lot of people cut down their expenses, sell their car, downsize, because they decide at the end of the day, there are things that are worth more than just than just being a worker. Nobody wants to keep living their life like that. And I think that's why a lot of people have let go of this notion that, like, I don't have a dream job anymore. I don't dream of servitude. Good for them. I don't dream of servitude either. But I think it's still important though. You gotta have some goals. Okay, fine. You don't have a job, but you need to have something else to do with your life. I think that a lot of people who fired had that problem. They had become so consumed with working and reaching fire that when they no longer had a job because now they had fired, they were like, oh my god, what do I do with myself? Like, they missed. I remember one guy was a CEO and he was like, I no longer had fancy meetings to go to, people to interact with. I no longer had something to talk about because I'm not doing anything. And there's just like a massive void that happens when you don't have something else in your life. So I think that before we all rush out to quit our jobs, although maybe we should, I don't know, before we all go out and do that, fill your life currently with something, 1 or 2 or 3 really meaningful things. And you know what? If you always wanted to learn Japanese or Spanish, put that in there. You always wanted to take up knitting, put that in there. You wanted to take up guitar lessons, put that in there. I think we can pick 1 or 2 things that are really important to us, sub it into our life, and subtract a little bit from our work so we can have that balance. The bills are still paid, we don't feel like a slave, and we feel like our lives have a little bit more meaning because we're doing the things that make us happy. I guess before I end this video, I just kind of wanted to end on like one last note that, like, I personally don't dream of labor. Yeah, since I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I realized that I could leave the rat race, I was like, yes, I'm gonna leave the rat race. I'm gonna wake up from the matrix and I don't want to be here. But the sad reality is, until the day that I die, I do still exist in reality. I still do exist in the matrix, and I'm never gonna wake up from the rat race. Even if I fired, I'm still part of society, or I'm still like living. And I think that, yeah, although it's great to just decide that you don't want to dream of labor, but if you didn't have to work, what would you do with your time? And I think that that's the most important thing to take from all of this. Okay, fine, you don't want to dream of labor, don't dream of labor. Figure out what you do dream of and pursue that. Maybe it's not work, maybe it's a hobby, but find it and figure it out. And I think that work won't seem so bad because now you got something more to you than just your job. All right, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.